Welcome to 15-Minute Discourse. Today we're taking a deep dive into time travel. Is it just science fiction, or could it actually be possible?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's one that's captivated humans for centuries.
Absolutely. And to explore this, we've got a pretty fascinating mix of sources. We've got some declassified defense intelligence documents, academic papers on the physics of space-time, and even some philosophical explorations of time travel paradoxes.
Those are always fun.
They really are. So get ready, because we're going to be tackling some pretty big questions today, like could things like wormholes and stargates actually act as shortcuts through time?
Right.
And if time travel is possible, does that mean the future is already written, or can we change it? And what about those classic paradoxes, like going back in time and killing your grandfather? Can logic even handle time travel at all?
Yeah, it's a lot to think about for sure, but it's definitely fascinating.
Well, let's start with the basics, the idea of wormholes. In 1985, Caltech physicists Morris and Thorne made a pretty groundbreaking discovery. They found that something called traversable wormholes are theoretically possible,
Hmm.
based on, get this, Einstein's theory of general relativity.
I always find it amazing how Einstein's theories just keep giving. you know, Decades later, we're still uncovering new implications.
I know, it's crazy, right?
It really is.
So tell us, what exactly are these wormholes?
So imagine tunnels. Tunnels through the fabric of space-time. These tunnels, these wormholes, could connect distant regions of the universe.
Okay.
Different universes, or even different times. It's like a cosmic shortcut. Step into one end, and you could emerge light years away, or even in a different era.
Whoa. So you're saying I could step into a wormhole and pop out in the time of the dinosaurs?
Well, in theory, yes, but of course, there are some major catches.
Yeah, I figured as much. What kind of catches are we talking about?
Well, for starters, these wormholes, they'd need something called exotic matter to keep them stable, and this exotic matter has to have negative energy density.
Negative energy density. So is this exotic matter just theoretical, or is there actually any chance of finding it?
Well, this 2010 Defense Intelligence document that we have actually dives into this a little bit. They actually explore some potential sources for this negative energy.
Like what?
Well, one is something called the Casimir effect, which is a quantum phenomenon where empty space, like literally nothingness, exerts a tiny force.
Wait, so even nothingness can generate force?
It's wild, right?
That is pretty mind-blowing.
It really is. The document also suggests that we might be able to manipulate electron-positron states to achieve this negative energy density, but that's a level of control that we might not be able to achieve for who knows how long.
Okay, so let's say, just for the sake of argument, we figure out a way to harness this exotic matter and create a stable wormhole. What could we actually do with it?
Well, the document focuses mainly on faster than light travel, but you bring up a really good point. The possibilities for time travel would be huge. But with time travel comes a whole host of potential paradoxes.
Right, like the classic grandfather paradox. What happens if you go back in time and prevent your grandfather from ever meeting your grandmother? Do you just blink out of existence?
Precisely. It's a question that philosophers have been wrestling with for ages. One possible solution is something called the Novikov self-consistency conjecture.
That's a mouthful.
It is, isn't it? But essentially, this conjecture suggests that the universe has a built-in way of stopping you from doing anything that would create a paradox.
So like some kind of cosmic safety net.
Exactly. In this case, something would always prevent you from changing the past in a way that erases your own existence.
So the universe protects itself from paradoxes. That's one way to think about it. But are there other solutions?
Absolutely. The idea of multiple timelines or parallel universes presents another solution.
Hmm.
In this scenario, your actions wouldn't actually change the past. You wouldn't be rewriting your original timeline. Instead, you'd be creating a new, separate branch of reality. So in that new timeline, you might prevent your grandfather from meeting your grandmother, but your original timeline, the one you came from, would remain intact. It's the possibility of infinite alternate realities. Every decision, every action creates a new branch, a new universe.
Whoa, a self-correcting universe or an infinite multiverse? Two very different ways of looking at it. Which one do you find more compelling?
Honestly, both ideas are incredibly thought-provoking. The concept of parallel universes really sparks my imagination.
Yeah, I can see why. But let's shift gears a bit. What does physics actually have to say about the feasibility of time travel?
Well, general relativity, as we talked about earlier, doesn't actually rule out time travel. But the sheer amount of energy needed to warp spacetime to that degree, combined with the potential for these mind-boggling paradoxes, it makes the whole thing highly speculative. Think of it like this. You could, theoretically, build a skyscraper using nothing but toothpicks.
Okay.
But actually finding enough toothpicks and then somehow making that structure stable, that's a completely different story.
That's a great analogy. So it's more about the practical challenges than the theoretical possibilities at this point.
Exactly. And there's another layer to this, something called energy conditions in physics.
Okay.
These are basically rules about how energy and matter behave in the universe. Like, for example, one of these rules is that energy density should always be positive. But to create a wormhole, you'd need to violate these conditions. And violating these energy conditions could lead to all sorts of weirdness that physics, as we understand it, can't really explain. It'd be like messing with the fundamental building blocks of reality,
Right.
and we just don't know what might happen.
Right. So before we wrap up this part of our discussion, I have to ask about time dilation.
Oh, yes, time dilation.
It's something that comes up a lot when we talk about time travel,
It does.
and I'm curious to know more about it.
Well, time dilation is where things start to get really interesting. It's a direct result of Einstein's theory of special relativity, which states that time is not absolute, it's relative. And this leads to some pretty wild stuff, like the twin paradox.
A twin paradox.
Yeah, imagine you have two identical twins. One twin stays here on Earth, while the other blasts off into space, traveling at a significant fraction of the speed of light. When that traveling twin returns to Earth, they will actually be younger than the twin who stayed behind.
Really?
Yeah, it's because time passes more slowly for the twin traveling at high speeds.
Wow. So it's like they've taken a fast-forward trip into the future.
Exactly.
So are you saying that time travel, in a sense, is already happening?
Well, it's more accurate to say that we see evidence of time dilation all around us. Take GPS satellites, for instance. The clocks on these satellites have to be constantly adjusted because of time dilation.
Because they're moving at high speeds and experiencing weaker gravity.
That's right.
So every time we use GPS, we're actually tapping into these subtle but very real effects of relativity.
We are. It's pretty amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's mind-blowing.
It really makes you think about the nature of time itself. How even on a tiny scale, some form of time travel might already be happening.
It really got me thinking about, all those stories about time travel throughout history. Are there any historical accounts or myths or even like personal anecdotes that suggest time travel could be more than just a theoretical concept?
That's a really interesting question. The idea of time travel, or at least time distortion, has been around for centuries. Take the ancient Greek myth of the Cave of the Seven Sleepers, for example.
The Cave of the Seven Sleepers. I've never heard of that. What is that all about?
Well, the legend goes that these seven young men hid in a cave to escape persecution for their Christian beliefs. They fell into a miraculous sleep, and when they woke up, centuries had passed. The world was completely different.
So they basically took an accidental one-way trip into the future.
Exactly. And even though it's rooted in mythology, it shows how long humans have been fascinated by breaking the boundaries of time.
It seems like the desire to explore time, whether it's going forward or backward, is just deeply ingrained in us. But are there any documented experiences, maybe in modern times, that suggest something beyond just myth and storytelling?
There are, actually. Some accounts describe people experiencing what they call chron displacement.
Chron displacement.
Yeah, it's often dismissed as anecdotal or lacking scientific rigor, but these accounts describe sudden, inexplicable shifts in perception, where people feel like they've been transported to a different time or a different place.
So you're saying there are people who claim to have actually time traveled?
Well, it's more about this feeling of disconnection from the present, like they're briefly out of sync with the flow of time. And while these experiences are hard to prove scientifically, they definitely add to the whole mystery surrounding time travel.
It makes you wonder if there's more to time than we currently understand. We've talked about wormholes being potential gateways for time travel, but are there other theoretical possibilities out there?
Absolutely. One that's particularly intriguing is something called the Tipler cylinder.
A Tipler cylinder. What's that?
Okay, picture this. An incredibly dense cylinder, infinitely long, rotating at nearly the speed of light.
Yeah, I'm picturing it. But how does this spinning cylinder connect to time travel?
Well, the idea is that the intense gravitational forces generated by this spinning cylinder would actually warp space-time so much that it creates what are called closed time-like curves.
Closed time-like curves.
Yeah, imagine paths through space-time that loop back on themselves, allowing an object to travel back in time and potentially even interact with its past self. You're basically creating this time loop where the past, present, and future are all intertwined.
Okay, that's fascinating. But I'm guessing there's some challenges with this Tipler cylinder idea.
Of course. For starters, creating and stabilizing a cylinder of infinite length. Yeah, that presents a bit of a challenge.
Just a bit.
Plus, the energy requirements would be astronomical, way beyond anything we can currently even imagine harnessing.
Yeah, I could see how that might be a problem. So while it's an interesting concept, it sounds like Tipler cylinders are still firmly in the realm of science fiction for now.
They are, yeah.
Are there any other ideas out there? Maybe ones that don't involve manipulating galaxies or building these impossibly dense objects?
There is one more approach that some physicists are exploring. It involves manipulating quantum mechanics to unlock the secrets of time travel.
Quantum mechanics, that's where things get really strange, right? The world of subatomic particles.
Exactly. At that level, the rules of classical physics seem to completely break down. Particles behave in ways that defy our everyday intuition.
So are you suggesting that the key to time travel might be hidden in the bizarre world of quantum particles?
It's definitely a possibility that some physicists are taking seriously. One idea involves exploiting something called quantum entanglement.
Oh, entanglement. That's where two particles are linked together in such a way that they can instantly influence each other, regardless of the distance between them.
That's right. Now imagine entangling particles not just across space, but across time.
So creating a connection between the past, present, and future at a subatomic level.
That's the idea. By manipulating these entangled particles, some believe we might be able to send information, or maybe even objects, through time.
Wow, that's mind-blowing. But how would that even work in practice?
Well, that's where things get very theoretical. We're talking about pushing the boundaries of both quantum mechanics and our very understanding of time itself.
It sounds like we're at the very edge of scientific exploration here. But before we get too lost in the quantum realm, I want to come back to some of the philosophical implications of time travel that we touched on earlier.
The intersection of physics and metaphysics, always a fascinating place to be.
We've talked about paradoxes and the possibility of multiple timelines. But what about free will? If time travel were possible, would our future be predetermined? Or would we still have the power to choose our own path?
That's a question philosophers have been debating for centuries, long before Einstein came along. There's a concept called eternalism, for example, which suggests that past, present, and future all exist simultaneously.
So it's like a giant cosmic DVD where all of time is already laid out, and we're just experiencing one frame at a time.
You could think of it that way. And if eternalism is true, well, then the whole concept of free will becomes a bit tricky. If the future already exists, are our choices really our own?
That's a lot to consider. But is there a philosophical perspective that allows for both time travel and free will?
There is. There's a view called compatibilism. This view argues that free will and determinism, the idea that all events are predetermined, they're not necessarily mutually exclusive.
So how can free will and determinism coexist?
Well, compatibilists argue that even if our choices are ultimately shaped by factors beyond our control, we still experience them as freely made.
It's like we're following a script, but we're so engrossed in the performance that it feels like we're improvising the whole thing.
That's a great analogy. And this debate about time travel and free will is likely to continue as long as humans keep pondering the mysteries of time.
And that's a good thing. These questions are what drive human curiosity and inspire us to push the boundaries of knowledge.
Absolutely. The journey is just as important as the destination.
Speaking of journeys, we've explored some really mind-bending ideas, from wormholes and Tipler cylinders to the mysteries of quantum entanglement. We even touched on some historical accounts and personal stories that suggest time might not be as straightforward as we think.
Yeah, it's been quite a journey through physics, mythology, and philosophy.
It really has. And now I'm curious about the more practical side of things. Let's say for a moment that time travel could actually become a reality. What would that mean for us? How would it change the world as we know it?
That's a question with almost endless possibilities and consequences, too. Think about the impact on history.
Right.
If we could travel to the past, would we be tempted to change events? Right wrongs, prevent catastrophes?
It's a tempting thought.
Yeah.
Going back and stopping wars, preventing tragedies, or even just reliving some of those cherished moments.
Yes.
But wouldn't that also be incredibly dangerous? I mean, we've all heard about the butterfly effect. Even the smallest change to the past could have massive ripple effects, changing the present in ways we couldn't even imagine.
It's true. There's that saying, those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. But with time travel, it becomes more like those who try to change the past might accidentally erase the present.
That is a chilling thought. And it brings up some big ethical questions, doesn't it?
Mm.
Would we even have the right to change the course of history, even if we thought we were doing the right thing.
It's definitely a moral minefield. And then there's the question of who would get to decide what's worth changing. And what about the potential for abuse? What if time travel technology fell into the wrong hands? Dictators rewriting history, criminals exploiting the past for personal gain.
Yeah, time travel could easily become a tool for chaos and tyranny.
It could.
But are there any potential benefits that might actually outweigh these risks?
There are definitely some potential benefits. From a scientific standpoint, imagine being able to observe past events firsthand.
Oh, wow, yeah.
It would completely revolutionize our understanding of history, archaeology, paleontology, you name it. Imagine witnessing the extinction of the dinosaurs
Wow.
or the rise of ancient civilizations, the formation of our planet. It would be incredible.
It would be like having a time machine for scientific discovery.
Exactly.
And what about medical advancements? Could we travel to the future, study diseases and treatments that haven't even emerged yet, maybe eradicate diseases before they even have a chance to take hold?
The potential for improving human health and well-being would be huge. But even with those benefits, the ethical and practical challenges of time travel would still be there.
It definitely seems like we're a long way from actually stepping into a time machine and traveling to the past or future. But even just exploring these ideas, grappling with the complexities, and thinking about the implications, that's what makes time travel such a captivating topic.
I agree. It speaks to our endless curiosity and fascination with the mysteries of time. And who knows, maybe one day what seems like pure science fiction today will be tomorrow's reality. But until then, we can keep exploring these ideas, pushing the boundaries of what we know, and letting our imaginations run wild.
And that's a great note to end on. We've reached the end of our time travel deep dive, and we hope you've enjoyed the journey as much as we have. If you found this exploration thought-provoking, be sure to like and subscribe for more deep dives into the world of knowledge and ideas. Until next time, keep exploring.